This is Shenea Stiletto. Hi, everyone. This is a solo episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast where I am going to be discussing the recent incident at Circus Smirkus, the youth circus that everyone knows. It is insanely popular in the circus world, and I know so many performers that started out in Circus Smirkus, and it led to them having professional careers for companies like Cirque du Soleil and all over the world. And I often, because I at this point haven't heard, I would say, anything overtly negative about Circus Smirkus over the years, and I regularly invite parents to send their children to Circus Smirkus, to Circus Smirkus camp, and as a lead up to them becoming a professional and getting their feet wet, and you can go on tour with the company. It's a really great model, and they're the ones that were doing it from long ago, and they have a great model. Again, I can't say that I have heard overtly negative things about Circus Smirkus until right now. If you haven't heard, there was a really tragic accident that happened with a very young performer, and he was, horrifically injured. There are reports again that he will be making a full recovery, but from the injuries that I have seen that he has sustained, that is a very long road to whatever that might mean. I definitely wish his family well, and from what I have heard, and from folks that are bringing this incident to my, to me to be aware of, it's sounding a lot like most of the incidents that I speak on about on the podcast. And it's very upsetting. It's very upsetting to be discussing this with folks that, have close personal connections to this incident, and that things were not handled well. You can go online, it's all over the news. And there are some Instagram posts that have been very informative about the rigging situation at Circus Smirkus for this particular tour, and that parents and children were bringing this to the attention of the coordinator at Circus Smirkus, that they did not feel safe with this rigger. They felt like the rigger was underqualified and just simply didn't know what they were doing. And their complaints were ushered away, as I often talk about on the podcast, and how we react in a lot of circus spaces, and the challenges that presents, which led to a very tragic accident that was probably 99% avoidable. And I, again, come back to folks where, again, I don't need, the parents are in an uproar. They should be. I would be. They've finally, they've canceled, I believe, shows, and we'll see if they continue with the rest of the tour. But again, it's not just even about removing that one person that was incredibly underqualified, who, unfortunately, I have to say this as well, wouldn't remove himself. And and I've also seen that too in these situations in circus, where that person is that underqualified, but has been put there in a very coveted position, or even just in a position that they're just not great in, and they're indignant about it. They won't leave. They won't leave. You couldn't get anybody to get them out. And I've, again, on the podcast, spoken about situations over the years that I have been privy to, or that everybody knows about. And there's been situations where, this person is leading to several injuries and so many accidents in a show. And it takes so many of the performers getting injured before that person is finally let go. And, there was different things within these situations, some of them are contract language that makes it difficult, but a lot of it is that the company wants to protect themselves, and it doesn't look good on them if they've got to take responsibility for these accidents or liabilities of someone who is underqualified that they put in some type of position, and they'll do anything to show that it wasn't necessarily their fault, because that brings the lawsuits and that brings the legal responsibilities, and that opens up the space for folks to get compensated and to hold these spaces accountable, lawfully, which I see that happening with this situation with Circus Smirkus. And this is unfortunate, right? Because this is a really, from what I understand and from what I know from folks that are kind of coming in and out, an environment that is has a good reputation in terms of supporting children's growth and development in circus. Now, again, have I been privy to everything behind the scenes in the Circus Smirkus space? No, I have not, but I still will speak on what I do know, and that's been quite a while. But intricate, intimate knowledge on a daily basis for operating, no, I don't. I don't know if they've been having issues like this for a very long time. I do know, again, from what I've been told by folks that have been connected to it from for a certain amount of time right now, that people have been saying things and have been unhappy, and so that brings me a lot of pause and cause. Or cause a consternation, I would say, because, again, when you're in environments, especially specifically with children, and folks have these types of concerns. And I think the thing is that I want to talk to people about and show them is that this situation is with children, but the situations that I'm usually talking to you about are with adults that are treated like children, right? People can say, oh, it's kids, and kids get nervous and scared. And who knows, maybe there was so much anxiety created within this situation. And the performer, again, you're feeling it, you have like a heightened sense of awareness that something isn't going right. And that can also make you not perform the way that you would normally perform. I'm not saying that this happened in this situation. I'm just giving you an example of people. I've seen that happen with people. They're so afraid of what they're doing that then they don't do their jobs like they know how to do them, because they're so worried about the unqualified people and about the position that they've been put in. Now, from what I understand on social media, again, you can find some very descriptive posts out there. About what happened and what they felt was the actual the problem that led to this really tragic accident. And I'm just not going to go into all the details. So I'm just going to allow folks to, to kind of seek that out in whatever way, shape, or form that they would like to, but it's public. And so these are things that are readily available. And then the other things that I'm speaking out about are only things that I've been told by people that are directly connected to this situation. And so I will divulge and speak on for as much as I know, because again, I don't want to misspeak, but again, I want to come back to the situation and the experiences of adults are usually the ones, coming back and saying these things in these situations that go wrong, and how it never seems to change, and that you're a professional in a space and you're saying, I don't think that person's qualified. I don't like how they're doing my rigging. I don't like how they're coordinating my act or what I'm doing. I don't feel safe with them. And again, professionals who have a lot of experience are saying things like this in circus spaces, like, this person is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to work with this person. And it's more than one person that is usually saying it in these environments in circus, and nothing will be done. And then a tragic accident will happen. And many of the times, and I was speaking to some circus people recently about this thing as well, of like when these really bad accidents hit the media and how few details everybody gets. And so it just seems like this like really big sensationalized accident that kind of came out of nowhere. And all we have to do is do these one or two things and it's going to fix it moving forward. And what we were talking about is how, the public or even those of us in the industry don't usually get to hear the behind the scenes take of all the things that led to that incident. Was that person not given enough stage time? Were they a backup? Were they a temporary replacement? Were they called at the last minute? How long had it been since they'd done the show? Were they new, or were they in the show for quite some time and they've been having disagreement with staff and they didn't feel listened to or heard, and they felt like they couldn't quit the show because they really needed the job? Was the environment conducive to the show that day? Was it cold in there? Was it warm? Had this person been sick previously? Had management just shifted over? Had the touring schedule just shifted? Did something on the tour happen prior to that? These are all the things that we don't normally get to hear enough of, because it's not just about like a safety concern. Sometimes it's like there's so many levels and layers, and many of the times I have to say there's so many things that affect a performer in getting to the stage that we're normally asking for things to change, and they don't change, and you still have to do your job anyway. But again, that comes back to, do we feel heard as participants in this industry? And I think this is a very sad lesson for these children that are in this environment, in terms of how the parents and how everyone involved handles the situation. Because the unfortunate thing is that this is not unique as a career professional, a situation happening like that. And do we want to prepare our youth in circus to experience situations like this, and then have them continue as if nothing is wrong, or again, normalizing how this situation is going to be handled? How this situation is going to be handled is the most important thing. It also is very important of how it's handled for Circus Smirkus moving forward. And I say this to anyone that comes to me when they're in a difficult situation and they're trying to do, I'm not going to just necessarily call it damage control, but they're like, what is our best holistic way forward? And I always tell them, you have several options here, and it's all about how you handle it and how you recoup the situation. But I also want to come back and talk about how the other disconcerting thing is in this industry is that you can handle it very, very poorly and still just rest on your history, your past accomplishments. And people have very short memories in this industry, and you could have handled something really poorly. There was a situation that happened just the other year. I won't go into details about it, but I was told by a lot of people about what happened and how terribly they felt and how terribly the situation was handled. And nothing happened. No one was reported to the authorities. There was no place for them to report to. People felt really, really like not listened to. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters to me. It matters to people that remember. Some people's memories are not that short. But the unfortunate thing is that these people can just recover, and that people will still seek them out because they feel like an opportunity is attached to that. And, I was just speaking about, how we chase, these opportunities so strongly in the circus environment, in the entertainment industry. I was speaking about how that leads to so much exploitation and abuse, because we teach each other that it's okay for these situations to continue to happen as long as someone's going to pay you, or going to make you feel famous, or going to make you feel important or special. I'm not saying that this is about stopping doing what you're doing. You've seen me do a lot of circus for a lot of years, and I still do it, even in spite of seeing so many things that I do not agree with and I think are wrong. But that's where solutions and policy comes in. And that's why I'm advocating in the way that I'm advocating, because I don't want to just stay on the sidelines and wring my hands and say, I just don't know what to do all the time. What do we all do? Like, we have no power here, which is what I hear all the time. But you actually do have power. Everyone has a lot of power. It just depends on how much you want to wield it. And how much we're all willing to take on in these situations. And if folks are willing to report. I was speaking with folks again involved in the Circus Smirkus situation, and again, I said, did you guys feel like you had any other place to go to report your concerns? And they said no. We kept going to management. We kept going to the company. That's where we should be going, right? And it's like, and that's why I have been pushing for SafeArt and SafeCircus, which would be a branch or division by the U.S. Center for SafeSport. This is a perfect example of this, however tragic and horrific. And again, I hope that this little young performer recovers fully and continues to do circus. At first, I hope that he just has a full recovery to be just like a normal person in his life and feels good. And then I hope that if he chooses and decides to, and that feels like it's best for his life moving forward, that he can do that, because he is so young. He's just getting started. And nobody should go through that at any point in their career, let alone when you're just getting your wings as a little like baby aerialist. But again, the parents and the folks involved, everyone included, feels like there was no outside entity for them to go to hold this company accountable. And again, this comes back to policy. This is why we need an entity where you can report all kinds of misconduct and abuses, especially in the youth-centered spaces, in social circuses, nonprofit circuses, after-school circus programs, circus camps, and then also folks that are taking kids from circus studios and having them go out and do shows and performances. That there needs to be something like that. And I'm sorry, but the hard part is, and I don't know if I've told this story very much on the podcast, but the woman that created the statute for the U.S. Center for SafeSport, I know her. I've been working with her now and speaking to her and getting advice from her and mentorship for quite some time now. She's been very helpful. And she's had some ideas that we should pursue in circus that circus people and advocates did not want to pursue. Just to let everybody know that. And she's like just this brilliant person. And for doing what she's done with SafeSport, or in and around this work. And she told me that when she was very first trying to get SafeSport introduced, SafeSport has been around now for about 7 or 8 years, but she was trying for almost 10 years prior to it getting introduced to get SafeSport created. And she said that she was going around to camps, like art camps and performance spaces and, sports camps and things like that, and circus camps. And she said, I went to circus camps. I went to youth circus spaces, and none of them wanted to be a part of this, this bill. They didn't support it. They thought that I was going to ruin their businesses and the way that they orchestrated their camps and the way that they ran things. And she's like, it's really interesting for me to tell you this. She's like, because then now all these years later, you're the one pursuing SafeSport to be, something that affects the arts and circus. She's like, and I went to those people. And, and the thing is, something really horrific had to happen, like, what happened within USA Gymnastics and Dr. Larry Nassar took them all 40 years to do something about it. But then when they needed a solution, who did they go to? They went to the person that had been offering the solution for like years at that point. And they were desperate at that point. And they said, wow, what have you got? She's like, I've been sitting here for a long time. She's a lawyer. She's a former Olympian. And these people, nobody would listen to her. It's wild to me. So for me, at this point in time, I think this is a very strong call for advocacy, for folks to call your representatives and say, we support SafeSport, expanding their jurisdiction into SafeArt and SafeCircus. And under that umbrella would be Safe Dance, Safe Cheer, building it out. Obviously, if you've never heard me speak about this expansion of SafeSport that I've had for a very long time, because I've worked on the amendments to the bill and to the law. And I'm speaking with those people a lot, and they've told me that so many different performing arts spaces have been coming to them for so long, and they don't have jurisdiction over them. They say they're coming to us like you're coming to us, telling us about including circus in these spaces. And so it's very obvious, that we shouldn't, again, continue to allow these things to be that OSHA came in and investigated, and then the company was fined, or the business was fined a fee, and then they were able to just create some kind of solution in-house until the next accident happens, or they cleared out one or two people and the system just continues on forward, right? And they're like, we dismiss those people. But I imagine within Smirkus at this point, it's probably become a part of the culture of things happening in a certain way. And I would say this as well to the parents and the people that are maybe involved that are not as upset. That brings me pause. I've been in a lot of environments like that. As a survivor of feats gymnastics and around a lot of environments that involve children and things like that, I've been around a lot of that where they're so reticent to make the situation accountable on the level that it should be. Let's minimize, let's just move forward and get people in there that are better qualified, which I'm not saying that this needs to decimate a model. I think that they obviously need to go within, and there needs to be a lot of people held accountable for this happening. It's not just one or two people in an environment like that that are making things bad, unfortunately. And like I said, usually there's a lot of little cuts within an environment like that. And then this is just something that ends up being like a really huge symptom of a deeper problem. I'm not going to say that that's necessarily in this situation, but from my experiences at this point now of hearing the same stories over and over again in these environments that are all very similar, I would probably say that that's maybe what's going on here. Again, not to demonize everybody involved because that is completely unfair, but we should never get to this point, especially when people are being so vocal. And I think, again, this comes back to the fact that so many of these spaces know that they're not accountable to anybody. I mean, if any of those parents or any of the people involved that hold these different titles, what were they going to do? I guess go to the police and say, we feel very unsafe, or they go to the EEOC and they file a complaint if their child is a legitimate employee during this experience. If it's, but I mean, again, that doesn't change anything in the moment. It doesn't change anything necessarily in the moment of where can we report this and get some eyes and ears on this immediately, where they know that, okay, oh, wow, we're going to file a report. We're going to do one of those things. And, that's going to hopefully get this on record in some way. Or the other thing that I would say with situations like this is everybody stand down. Thank you. My child is no longer going to be participating in this environment. They're off the tour until you guys figure this out. And that is the pressure that we experience in these environments as entertainers and performers, where everyone's just doesn't want the show to end. Oh, everybody spent so much money, and oh God, how is this going to make everybody look? How is this going to make my career look? Even the situation I was talking about the other year that happened. What could have been done there is an absolute outright boycott. In that moment, no one else is performing until this is taken care of, and we're all happy and we all agree on that. Just like with this situation here, if everybody was making all these complaints and things, and again, I'm not blaming anybody for continuing to pursue this. I know how it feels. Believe me, I understand it. I get it. And again, me even advocating, no amount of me advocating sometimes seems to, to get folks, and even folks that are coming to me for advice and they don't take it. And I think, wow, okay, what advice are you taking? Because I don't understand what action you're taking, because to me, I see a lot of inaction in these environments. And then I look up and wow, the same exact experience is going to be happening this next time around with the same people involved. How about that? I'm sure they've got it handled. It's going to be way different. Right. And so I think we're all tired of that. For me, what takes a turn is anything that's involving kids or children. And that's what a lot of these policies that I'm discussing are for, because they will protect a lineage of children getting into the business and supporting them. And then they will have actual rights once they step into being a professional. so that those, benefits are not just around children, but that they'll benefit you at on both sides of your career as a professional and as someone that's an amateur that's just getting started. Whichever environment you're in, it's not just about being a high functioning professional performer. But again, for me, the important thing would have been this person is highly unqualified. Not one other child is going up there until we get this solved. If the tour is going to lose money, if we're going to lose access to things that were going on and happening, so be it, right? So be it. Maybe a disaster and a tragedy could have been avoided had that occurred. And again, this is not making anybody bad. They were trying to keep up with the demands that have been placed on them. And again, we get in very tricky situations doing this kind of job because this environment is very challenging and very demanding and very hard. And sometimes at the very end, you want to trust the people in charge and know that they have your child's best interest in mind, right? I mean, that's what they're there for. And so I think that, again, moving forward with radical approaches, which I don't think these are radical approaches, but it's obvious, and it's been obvious to me and other folks out there that are advocating and believe in policy, that we need to have better checks and balances in place in our circus environments in all areas, whether it's labor rights, workers' protections, union rights, protections for hobbyists, protections for amateurs, all across the board, that we need to work towards these three policies: the Circus Arts Category Recognition Bill, the SafeArt SafeCircus Act, and the Circus Workers Act. You can even call it the Circus Workers Protections Act, whatever you want to call it. But those are, again, the three bills that I am currently pursuing with the Circus Arts Guild of America. And it just pains me to hear these really awful incidences where people feel so traumatized in these circus environments. And these are environments that we all want to be in. We all want things to work and go well. But there are outdated models in place that need to shift and need to change. And, I think that's the hard part with a lot of these spaces. Some of these spaces have great and big names attached to them, but they're not good environments, and they haven't been for a long time. And they get to continue to operate because they've been around for so long. And the network is working. They have a lot of support. They're able to garner a lot of attention and a lot of support and a lot of popularity. And so people don't want to see these environments go down. And some of them are just so, not keeping up with the times. And it's unfortunate because folks will still seek these environments out because of the name. And again, I'm not saying this with Smirkus because, like I said, I regularly tell, gymnastics parents and all sorts of parents that ask me, and they really want their children to, they want to know where to pivot them towards. And, I say obviously which environments, there's a lot of circus camps out there. There's a lot of youth circuses out there, that could, obviously operate whatever is best for your child. I always tell them, go investigate that environment and see if that is best for your child. Don't just go blindly into anything, which I would imagine and hope that everybody understands that that's also what I'm saying. When I give recommendations or I say things to folks, it's also based upon the decisions that we make when we go into an environment and we intuitively feel what it's like for our child or for whoever we're trying to encourage into that environment or situation, and we're sussing it out. But we also deserve to have databases that keep track of these environments where we know about incidents that have happened. We know about small reports that have happened. We know about folks that are getting background checks. We know about people that are certified. And I don't know if this rigger was a union rigger or a non-union rigger. I have to say at this point too, there's been a lot of consternation around these union riggers being, pumped out by IATSE that high-level performers have been very unhappy about and feel like they don't have, a lot of say in these union riggers being hired in shows, and that the union riggers, these are things that I've been told directly by people that are experiencing these things, by the way. So this is allegedly, but they're saying allegedly, that they don't feel like they're coming out very qualified. And that's a problem. And the problem there too is that there is no other union, the voice for an artist, that will be the union voice or be the supportive voice that negotiates against those issues. It's just the private companies hiring them, bringing them on still continuously. And so where is the voice of the folks within that can say, hey, this is getting concerning. How many reports are we having, in this particular situation where things are, not going well? And this type of rigor is there. Now, like I'm saying, this could have easily been a non-union rigor that also too didn't have great certification, because we're not keeping track of anything like that. We don't, that again, all these myths in this industry that people are so certified and so highly skilled. Unfortunately, that's not true. It's not true. And we don't have enough systems in place to track these things on a federal level or even on a state and local level where they are specifically, I'm talking about specifically categorized for circus arts. And that means so much more than this, very general, broad definition of what you think a rigor is or anything like that. I'm really, for all of us that have been around for a very long time, there's so much more that goes into it than, they do have this certified title from such and such. We need to build out better systems of regulation that increase the health and safety of our environment. So I know this was actually a pretty long episode. I lost my microphone. Sorry, it's my new mic and she's having issues. So forgive me. But she does look fabulous. She's white and gold. She matches my background. But I felt a lot of ways about this incident, and I hope that there's more conversations and discussions that move this forward, and that there are more advocates brought into this conversation about real solutions moving forward. Instead of circus is so dangerous and should kids be doing circus and things of that nature. It's like we know how things can be better and be safe, right? Because those are kind of the standard conversations that you end up hearing. And it's like, again, it's about having children involved in circus, but in like what way, right? And again, the old systems of things, the way that they do not work. And to me, this comes back to a culture shift. And I spoke about this in one of my most recent episodes on the Circuspreneur Podcast about the cultural shift that needs to happen within circus, just like we had to have a culture shift within gymnastics, right? And how you look at things when they go wrong, how you naturally, it's natural to that environment. It's not natural, but how you naturally react in those environments that is not conducive to a new set of, even regulations that are in place, right? We were discussing on one of the last episodes, and I've been discussing with advocates of, you put out a survey and then people lie on the survey, and you're trying to get honest feedback from the industry, but then people, will just check a box and say, I'm happy, everything is great. And then they're like, great. We surveyed, 300 artists, and they all said they were very happy with this new thing that we were trying out. Everyone's happy. And, you'll find out and talk to folks, which I know people don't like me saying this, but we have to speak honest to get these things to change. And all of us can be guilty of that, I believe, where then you find yourself, not responding, negatively on something because you don't want to be singled out as that person. You don't want them to put, things together, even if it's supposed to be anonymous. And that's, again, a challenge of, we were discussing about how you can get social workers, you can get folks that are, accessible in mental health, you can get all the trainers. But, if people don't feel like they can lean into those things, no one's going to sign up. Because they think, maybe I'm going to be reported if I sign up too much for this. No one's going to want to go and take a leave. They're going to be afraid, like, I don't want to take too much leave because people are going to see me as not doing well. If I'm having an off day or anything like that, you don't. And that is a culture shift. And that is very challenging to get outside of that groupthink and that brainwashing. And that is something very much that we need to do in these environments, especially when it involves children and circus. and the regulations that I feel we need to start implementing and we should be implementing in and around these spaces. But it can't just be these small cherry picked solutions that you see where now we've put mats, but only in that company. Now that company has mats in that situation. And now, let's change that. Now we have that little cherry picked solution. That's like incremental change. And what we need is just a complete shift. And for those of you that, or for those that are in these spaces where you're the owner, you're the producer, you're the director, you're in this very you're the investor, for me, again, it comes back to you being willing for these environments to change, because whoever is wielding all the power, that's how much these environments at this point in time change. And I feel like, again, those are the folks that should be in the room advocating for increased and better policies. And it shouldn't just be about what is going to be the best to protect our own business. And I'm not saying that you deserve to have your business exploited. Again, I will say it's not about just going around trying to exploit all these businesses, saying that they're doing all these crazy things and bad things wrong. But we're definitely saying that there needs to be a certain level of accountability, and that there are outmoded ways of doing things, and that you should be speaking up for those things just as strongly as the people that end up being affected and end up being the ones that get into the accidents and lose their careers or have to sue, or that are going to be the most vulnerable because they're the ones risking their lives or risking their careers by going out and doing something that is in an environment where they're not being protected properly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this solo episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to the podcast. Please like and subscribe and comment, again. And as always, send me your thoughts about the episode, and send me your thoughts about local and, current international circus events. This is, again, how I learn and how I make conscious choice and decision about what I share. And, again, preserving anybody's anonymity. You see, I always try to, preserve people's anonymity as much as possible. I only sometimes give like certain little titles just so that people understand maybe whose almost voice it is. But even if in that situation, it would seem too close and you would feel too vulnerable, I get that. No one wants their themselves or their child or their jobs or anything like that to be negatively affected because they needed to share something that was honest about a situation, because they hopefully, and I think that everybody's coming from a good place, want to help and make sure that these situations never happen again. And I think, again, coming back to, if we want these situations to never happen again, we need to move very differently on a state, local, and federal level for the circus arts in America and abroad and beyond, everywhere in circus.